Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Economista 101 with Imran and myself. So today we want to look at the AQA AS exam paper in full detail. So let's have a look. So the AQA exam paper has been split into two papers. So you will be at the end of the year sitting two exam papers. The first paper is going to be based on microeconomics, and the second paper will be based on macroeconomics. Both papers will be 1.5 hours long. So each paper will be 90 minutes in duration, 1.5 hours long, and they will have 70 marks each. So both paper 1 and paper 2 will have 70 marks each. The other thing to note also, which is quite crucial for time management and for students who perhaps struggle with time, is the mark to minute ratio, right? So if you do the calculation, 90 divided by 70, that gives you an approximate 1.29 minutes per mark. So for every question, for every 1 mark rather, you will have 1.29 minutes to answer that particular question, which is okay. It's reasonable, you know. Sometimes we are taught, or we've heard of the idea of mark per minute, and that's something that I always would encourage my students to also do that and try your best to stick to your mark per minute ratio, because that way you will have inevitably more time at the end of the exam to come back to certain questions that you're not sure you want to spend more time on. So that's one piece of advice I would give when it comes to the ratio element of mark to minute. Fourthly, this point here, there will be two contexts to choose from. So by the way, both macro and macro will be will have 1.5 hours each. There will be 70 marks each. And they will also, both of these papers have two contexts, which is really interesting. So they don't give you a compulsory context to do. They will give you an option. So they will say, okay, context A, context 1 rather, or context 2, and you have to select which context to choose. And honestly, guys, what you want to do is choose the context that you feel are more comfortable answering, but also think strategically where you can attain the most marks. And that's why, decision making is absolutely crucial at that moment, is to look at the questions and see where you can maximize your marks. Maybe even do a bullet point like answers, section on the margin or something like that, where you can kind of understand where you can potentially gain marks. Obviously, don't spend too long on it. That would be disastrous. But one trick I will give you is actually use the insert, because you will get an insert as well, a context booklet, right, in the AS exam. And what you can do is have a flick through the insert, and it's got all the questions there, one after another. I think it's in the middle for the first context, and for the second context it's right at the back page. Have a look through that, flick through that quickly, make maybe bullet points of what you can potentially answer. But that's one tip I can give you, and it saves a lot of time, rather than you get your booklet and you're trying to answer it, but then you're looking at you're trying to flick over the pages and get the question that has that you're trying to answer, then go to the second context and then flick through. Believe me, save a lot of time. Use your insert to answer the context that you feel will be more easier for you, but also where you can maximize your marks as well. So think of maximizing marks in your decision making. That's the context element. When you come to the section where you have to answer the context, which is going to be in section B, you have to choose the context. But before this, you also have to look at multiple choice questions. You will be given a question based on anything to do with the spec, and then of course you will be given 4 possible answers, and then you have to select the right answer. So the first thing you do when you open the booklet, you'll notice there are questions there which are multiple choice questions, and there are 20 of them as well. So you'll have, for instance, paper 1 microeconomics, 20 MCQs, and macroeconomics 20 MCQs. So that would be 20 marks already done. And then after, you start looking at your section. So whether you want to do context 1 or context 2 as part of section B. So remember, section B will have 2 contexts, and you will have to select the best context where you can potentially maximize your marks. And then when you've chosen your context, guys, this is how the marks will be laid out in front of you. You will firstly have to answer a definition, which will accrue up to 3 marks. Okay, so the definition will gain you up to 3 marks, and it could be based on anything in the specification, anything of that particular paper. So if it's microeconomics, could be any definition from micro. If it's on macroeconomics, then the definition could be anything on macro. So those are the 3 marks there. The second question of section B is going to be a 4-mark calculation, and those 4 markers could vary, you know, in terms of the maths that is demanded. Could be working out averages, could be a mean, median, for instance. And remember, if there's questions on decimal places, sometimes they do say to 2 decimal places, you have to round it up. So a bit of tip there for you. But to be honest with you, the calculation element is not too difficult in terms of the mathematical demands. So don't worry too much about it. If you feel that you're going to spend a lot of time on the calculation question, my advice is move on to the next question and then perhaps come back onto the calculation question. Now, the next question in section B is the data comparison. Now, you may want to watch one of my videos that I'm going to be creating soon about how to effectively answer data comparison questions. There is a trick, but it's up to 4 marks that you can gain. So they will give you data and you have to refer to the insert, the context booklet, and then after, of course, whatever they kind of guide you to, gain that data, work things out, and then you have to explain the data, which is quite important, or rather they will ask you to compare the data. And you may want to watch one of my videos where I look at something called data comparison, how to effectively answer data comparison questions. Lastly, in section B, when it comes to the small mark questions, you'll have a 4-mark diagram question. So they'll give you a context and then you have to create that diagram that they're after. Now, the diagram, guys, could be a simple demand and supply diagram, but sometimes I've noticed in the AQA specification, at times they ask you to draw a bar chart, for example, or even a pie chart. So just be careful, you could get those type of questions and you have to be confident and comfortable to answer those type of questions. But it will be based on the context, at times on data within the insert, within the context, and then you have to kind of extract the data and then create those charts, if it's a chart, or if it's a diagram and they ask you to draw a diagram based on the context that they give you. So that's the 4-mark diagram. So in the short answer questions, the short mark questions, what you'll notice is that the marks accrue up to 15. So you have your 3 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. So that's 15 marks there. And obviously you've done the 20 marks prior, the MCQ, so that's 35 marks. So where are the remaining 35 marks, I hear you ask? Well, there will be a 10 marker, as you know, and this is an explanation question. So you have to explain 1 or 2 points. It depends on the question. Sometimes they may say explain 2 points. Sometimes they keep it vague. So one potential point could be really good and it could be developed well enough to actually gain you 10 marks. I'm going to be also making an effective 10 marker answer, so watch out for that video as well. And then of course you've got your 25 marker, the crucial 25 marker. Yeah, I can see you raise your eyebrows for this. Yeah, the bulk of the marks, guys, comes in one question, the 25 marks. So 25 out of 70 is based on one question. So yeah, 25 marks is an argument, right? For versus against argument of the question at hand that they give you. As well, likewise with the 10 marker, I will be also creating a 25 marker effective answer. So watch out for that as well. But essentially the 25 marker here, what we are saying is a argument, an economic argument, a for versus against argument that you need to develop. Right. So here we are, 35 marks. So 10 out of 25. Half of the marks of each paper are on 2 questions, guys, on 2 questions. So therefore, strategically looking at this paper, what you want to do is maximize your marks, especially in these 2 questions, right? You want to gain as much of that 50% of marks here in those 2 questions so that you have some kind of tolerance and give leeway with the other questions in terms of trying to maximize marks. Obviously you want to maximize as much as possible, but sometimes it's not possible. So where you want to do the best is here in the 10 and 25 markers. So yeah, hopefully this kind of breakdown gives you a good insight into what to expect when you sit your exam at the end of the year. All the best, guys.